Nestled within the Ardennes, the world-famous Spa-Francorchamps has played host to motor racing for over 100 years. The first race here took place in 1921 with motorbikes of all things around the original 15-kilometer circuit. The first 24-hour race took place in 1924 on the public roads that make up the vast circuit. This course has taken many shapes and sizes over the years, but the one constant has always been thrilling and breathtaking racing. Today, we do as they did in 1924. We race twice around the clock. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the RCI 24 Hours of Spa. Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Ryan Gill and Christian Stricker for the first few hours of this race. Ryan Gill, welcome in. Welcome to Spa. It's the most grueling race on the World Tour calendar, and it's going to be a long but brilliant 24 hours.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from wherever you are in the world joining us. Jesse, couldn't have done the intro any better justice myself. And it is fantastic to be here for the Spa 24 hour. After we had the 24 hours of Kyalami last year, I think it was only logical that the next place we were going to go was to hit off the big one here at Spa. And a race that I'll be attending later this year, in fact, for some esports series involving Fanatec. So going to be exciting to head out here in person, but we're going to stay here in the virtual world for the next 24 hours and change. And my word, is it going to be exciting. We have some of the best cars that we have seen around here all season long, and they're going to be participating in 24 hours of racing around here, Jesse. And at this circuit, across a 24-hour race, pace is not the only thing you need to get to the end of a race around here.
100%, Ryan. I couldn't have said that better myself. You need a lot of luck. You need patience. You're also going to need everybody else to play very, very nicely. You're also going to have to hope your car is set up perfectly for the conditions. Speaking of, let's talk about the weather forecast. We do have a weather forecast for you for the 24 to come. The next 24 hours, 75% chance of rain. Completely cloudy here in Belgium so far this afternoon, and it's probably going to continue like that for a large portion of this race. 75% chance of rain still leaves 25% that it could be a dry race. We've had that happen before in the history of RCI endurance races, but we'll see. All the drivers will have known all week leading up to the race and the weeks prior to that as well that it could potentially have some wet weather in it. So we'll see if that is the case. All dry now, though. The track fast at 27 degrees C and 21 ambient. No wind to speak of and no sun either. Ryan Gill, what makes the 24 so special?
Well, what doesn't make the 24 special? I mean, the fact that it is an entire day, effectively, of racing. Obviously, you know, you can get the occasional things like red flags happen as well, but it's 24 hours in which you are technically in a race. You're technically driving around the circuit. You're competing against other people, and it's 24 hours in which whoever makes the least mistakes as possible, or the smallest mistakes possible, usually comes out on top. It's a race that, you know, it rewards pace, but it also rewards consistency above all else. And you're going to need a little bit of luck out here as well if you're going to make it towards the end of this race. We'll be heading to the grid in just a few moments' time. But Jesse Lee, looking back on the qualifying that we had last week, of course, for each of the World Tour races, we have a Super Pole style event, so 30-minute qualifying session followed by Super Pole. And from what I understand, it is the championship leaders yet again back on pole position. But that's not going to be enough for them this time around, because they have double points on offer for this race in the Spa 24. And you're going to want to believe that the Yaz Heat team with Malinowski and Boothby are going to want to capitalize on that massively.
Oh, it's 100%, and it's a little bit more serious than that. We had a very real possibility that the Oz Heat UCOG 992 wouldn't even make it to qualifying. If they wouldn't have done, they would have had to have started 32nd today on the grid. Malinowski was the driver doing the qualifying duties here, and he was ill 1 week ago to the point where he was turning down the force feedback in his wheel to get the car around the track. So he did show up, and boy, did he. Hung around the top 5 all qualifying long, put in that dagger lap at the end of Super Pole, and took the pole position. So it was a fraught undertaking for the championship leaders just to get back to the front of the grid. And there also might be a third driver with that team. We interviewed Malinowski post qualifying a week ago. Got no definitive answer for you of if they have a third driver. We'll play it by ear as well. We'll see how it goes. But the other thing I'm looking at, Ryan, is what can everyone else do behind them? The Legion of Racers car's back. That 889 car qualified in P2, and just right behind them, 8/100ths of a second difference between pole position and second place.
Yeah, so as we're at the moment just in the phase with the grid lining up at the moment, we think we will have a tiny bit of a delay as it starts. And whilst we have this little bit of a delay, it gives us a little bit of an extra chance to talk about the schedule that we'll have for the ongoing 24-hour. Of course, we don't just have myself and Jesse Lee here in the box. Christian Stricker, of course, is our broadcast producer for the time being, at least. We'll have Stewie, of course, coming and broadcasting later on, and Jake Boswell, the Bosmeister, who has been covering some of the Wednesday stuff. But other commentators that we'll have joining us here, Jesse, of course, Mike Jones, who does a lot of the Super Bowl and does some of the late night shifts. We've also got the likes of Les Stevenson and Tim Peck with us again. Ted Edwards is going to hop in for a couple of stints, as far as I know, as well. And even amongst that, we have some special guests here for this race. In fact, we have 2 of them, don't we?
Yeah, it certainly is. It's going to be fantastic to have some of our guest commentators come in. I was just doing the math, as you might expect, even before the race has started. Folks, we've got 9 casters bringing you the 24 this year, 4 broadcasters, and they'll be switching in groups. And it's going to be one of those races. The drivers aren't the only ones that are going to get a workout during this, of course, but those special guests. Ryan Gill, go ahead and announce who our special guests are for this 24.
So the 2 guests we have Mr. Paul Jeffrey, which is a name that I'm pretty sure everyone knows at the moment in the chat. And if you don't know about Paul Jeffrey and you don't know about Race Department, then I don't know what rock you've been living under for the last 6-7 years. But Paul Jeffrey will be joining us. Of course, he does commentary for SRO Esports, and he is one of the mainline Ferrari Esports Series commentator. And then we also have DJ Clark joining us as well, who does some of the SRO Esports America and SRO Esports Asia commentary as well. So it's going to be great to have DJ and Paul joining us for this race. Unfortunately, I don't get to commentate alongside any of them, but what I do get is I get plenty of hours to commentate alongside Jesse Lee. So I think that makes up for it.
That's very kind of you to say, Ryan. And of course, Ryan Gill and I, we're here for the start. We're going to be here with you in 24 hours to bring you the checkered flag as well. It's nice symmetry. I like that. We're here for the green and we're here for the checkered. We'll be here in between as well as we finish up our duties on the back end here and everybody gets back to the grid. It's important to mention, we talked about the weather. We talked about what you got to do to get through the 24. But before you do any of that, Ryan, we all know you have to survive lap number 1. Everybody's going to be going for it, even in a 24-hour race, because you'll never get a better chance to make up positions than you will on the first lap. But more than that, I feel like personally, and tell me if you disagree, you really do have to remain patient.
Yeah, well, patience is something that sim racers and real racers are not very good at, but being patient is one of the most important things in a long race like this. I mean, you have to think about it, right? You have 24 hours, which is a very long time, and you have to think to yourself, okay, I have 24 hours. Of course, when you're in the race and you're in a stint, you want to do it as well as you can, and you want to get up as high as you can, but like you said, it's important to have that patience sometimes. And one of the things that I often tell my teammates when I'm in an endurance race with them is that if they can bring the car back into the garage in the same position they were in when they went back out there, I'll take that any day of the week over pushing a bit too hard and being a bit impatient, getting caught up in an accident, and then losing 2 or 3 places as a result of some damage.
Yeah, of course. I would actually take that a step further. What I tell my teammates is just don't damage the car at all. I don't care what position you're in. As long as the car's not damaged, it greatly adds to your chances of a good finish. Somewhere around 25% of the cars around lap one will take damage at some point, even if that's incredibly minor or cosmetic. You'd prefer it not to be your car. Here we are, rejoined live pictures of Spa-Francorchamps here, and it's still a very cloudy day. The temperature has cooled off a bit. It was quite warm a little bit ago, but now 17 degrees on the grid. The track completely green. Ryan Gill, what's that going to do to the tires and the tire temperatures in this opening stint?
Well, the track conditions, with the track not being as grippy as the drivers would like it, that's going to mean that for at least the first stage of the race, you're going to have to be a lot more careful coming out of the corners, especially in some of these cars that are a bit more loose, should we say, when you put down the power. So some of the drivers not going to be able to do the lap times that they would maybe have liked to have done to start off the race. And of course, with the cooler temperatures that we have down here as well, that means the tire wear won't actually be anywhere as significant as it probably will be later on in the race. We're starting at 8 a.m. Local time for the Spa race. So, of course, it's just going to get hotter and hotter as the day goes on. But then, of course, it will cool down again. And once we get to the night stage, it will get to the coldest it will be all race long. But 17 degrees, that's a pretty nice ambient and track temperature to start the race out. Maybe you'd want it a bit warmer for a couple of the cars, but I think those track conditions are going to be the biggest concern for the first 15, 20 minutes of the race, as some of the drivers, they're not going to be comfortable in green track conditions, and they're going to want to hope that the track gets up to optimum as quick as possible.
Certainly going to be the case, and I am quite curious about that exact fact. How quickly will the car go, or will the track rather go from green to fast to optimum? Sometimes it's incredibly quick indeed, and I think the situation here may favor that. No immediate threat of rain will be the big ticket item for every team right now. No immediate rain calculation necessary, at least halfway into this stint. A ever fleeting little bit of serenity for all of the teams. This could be a race that mimics real life, where rain showers off and on. It could be completely dry. We're not quite sure. It's all about what Mother Nature has in store. The cars have been released on the pace lap of I think they're only going to go around one time. In fact, of course, we do have a safety car here. If there is any sort of pile up or issue on the first lap, we do have a safety car for that very reason, and they'll all group up behind the safety car, and we'll walk you through that in the eventuality that we get to it. Ryan, I take a look at Eau Rouge and Raidillon, and I just wonder how many more races are we going to get to see on this particular layout.
Well, of course, the Spa track going under a couple of changes for this year and moving forward. And I think one of the big changes for them, obviously, is increasing that runoff at the top of Raidillon, which, let's be honest, after some of the horrific accidents that we've seen at Spa over the years, it was probably due some form of change. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of differences of opinion as to whether the track should be changed, if it's for the better, if it's for the worse. But I think in my opinion, any corner which has had significant chance of loss of life accidents over the past couple of years probably does need looking at, and it is good that they've had some work done to it. Of course, it's not all finished yet, but hopefully in the future we may see that version of Spa come into ACC, and who knows, maybe it'll help the chance of accidents get a bit lower around in the sim world as well. But one thing to touch on the rain that you were talking about earlier, though, Tom Bryant, the admin for today, has told me 75% chance of rain during this race, Jesse. And, well, the last time Tom Bryant quoted me a percentage for rain, that was at the Misano race, and he told me there is a 100% chance it will rain. And it did rain, but only in the last hour.
Well, of course, that is the wild and wacky world of ACC weather, because there is no definitive yes or no for the weather. It is truly random, and you could only set it to certain values, so to speak. So 75% of the simulations came back with rain at some point. Doesn't mean it's going to be a deluge, doesn't mean it's going to rain for a very long period of time. It just means that at some point in 75% of simulations it happened, and in 25% of the simulations it didn't rain at all. And we are expecting it to rain, at least in some capacity. Nothing too heavy, but showers that would certainly probably prompt a change over to the wet weather Pirelli tire. We'll see what we get here in the first hour and see how it goes. I saw some of those simulations myself. Some of them had quite long periods of rain. Others had very, very brief showers. And of course, we all remember what happened a few rounds ago. Ryan Gill, nervous drivers right now, you would think. The start of a 24-hour race, you may wonder at home, why would you be worried at the start of a 24-hour race? Well, it means everything, doesn't it, just to get to this point. Nervousness, you want to get a good start, you want to settle in, but right now, you're thinking about how you get that done.
Nerves, excitement, pretty much anything you could feel, goes through you at some point in a 24-hour race. You'll get sorrow, you'll get despair, you'll get, like I said, those nerves, excitement. You'll get those victories that mean so much to you and your team. And it is a special race because there's so much that goes into it. So much practice goes into races like these, and they really are a slog. They really are a challenge to get through as you go from start to finish. And anyone who finishes on top as a winner in a 24-hour race, they fully deserve it, because it's not easy. You need luck on your side, and pace alone definitely does not dictate who will win this race. The fastest car out on track, the fastest car all season, has been that 992. They would be the favorite to come out here as winners today. But that is nothing is guaranteed for this race. They have the 501 starting alongside them. They've got the 404 and the 972 right behind them. The 70, the 349, the 818, the 500, the 200, and the 411 round out your top 10. It's 5 pros and 5 silvers apiece as we get ready for the start here, down towards the line. 24 hours of racing is ready to get underway here at the legendary Spa-Francorchamps, and it is live. The RCI 24 Hours of Spa is go, as Malinowski is going to get the inside line and up through Eau Rouge and Radillon for the first time into the lead, but now he's going to have to watch for the slipstream of Pagardel behind him in the 501. That Audi has some pace behind it, but you can see Roth losing out to Watchner just for a moment there. He's dropped back to 4th place as they work their way towards the end of the Camel Straight for the first time, and there's contact between 4th and 2nd place. There's contact between the Audi and the McLaren of the Connection Loss Racing team, and there's already been drama, Jesse.
High drama indeed. I thought that Adam DeBeal in the 500 was going to get sent in Eau Rouge, but it didn't happen. They were able to gather it back up. Unfortunately, at the end of the Camel Straight is where it all kind of kicked off, and now through the tight hairpin, it looks a lot more not tight than it actually is. And of course, the old term no name, no longer called that these days. It's called speakers, but a lot of people will, of course, defer. Garrett Fisher in the 6th place position, and I have been told that the safety car has been deployed, and in fact, that is the case. The safety car is out. All drivers will likely be reducing their speed, and in fact, they are. One thing I wanted to bring up right now is obviously Malinowski was out there and Pogdel were the 1 and 2 placed cars, but the Legion of Racers 889 that qualified P2 not in this race. Oh my goodness, we didn't see this. Joe McCauley got big time crashed, and there was a bunch of accidents about 20th on back. I think that was the Pace Hub car that got span as well and had heavy contact, but none in my eye had a bigger contact than the 18 of McCauley.
Yeah, definitely some big contact there. So safety car situation deployed. One of the first times we've actually had to deploy a safety car in an endurance race situation. The first time we actually used it was not for an incident situation at all, in fact, and this is going to be one of the first times that we do use it for its intended function. So, of course, the race has been essentially nullified. The safety car is waiting at the midpoint, I would say, of the Kemmel Straight at this moment, and it's waiting for the pack to reach it. And essentially what will happen now is that the drivers that have received damage on the opening lap, they can come in, they can get that damage repaired and change the tires, refuel the car if they need to. Just put a bit of fuel in and get the car going again. And essentially what it will do is allows us to bunch the field back up again and hopefully minimize the impact of what that accident was on the very first lap. And I see Malinowski at the moment. He's going around on the pit limiter at this point. I would not be surprised if race control give him the message to just let off that pit limiter for a moment and get the pack a bit caught up, because it seems that everyone's bunched up together at the moment, unless they are waiting for this car to come out of the pit lane, which might be the case to try and avoid seeing a car go a lap down from the start. And that is Joe McCauley coming back out of the pit lane, who was hit pretty hard, as you said, at the start of the race, Jesse, and he should hopefully now be able to reach the back of this pack, and we should, in theory, be able to get back underway and racing again within a lap's time.
Don't worry about that chartreuse, we'll call that green or yellow, depending on what your preference is. Don't worry about that very bright car sitting at the top of Radion, or excuse me, actually down the Kemmel Straight now that I think about it. That is the pace car. That's a GT4 Mercedes AMG. I believe it's driven by Tom Bryant. Or is it a Porsche? Oh, I thought it was going to be an AMG. It is not. It is a Porsche, and it's not even a GT4 version.
I think it was supposed to be a Mercedes, but we've had a bit of a plan B. I think the car's broken down in the pit lane, so we've had to get the spare out.
Well, the spare Porsche safety car is out, and I will be a little critical of Tom Bryant's pace car maneuvers. Usually they don't go out on the circuit and stop like that. Usually they tuck around a slip road and they wait for the leader to pick them up. So while we could be critical of that, just be thankful that all the drivers were briefed about the safety car situation and what to do in that case. And obviously the protocol is whenever the race admin or race control, whomever it would be, tells them that the safety car is being deployed, they go to the limiter. The race is nullified at that point. And in the case of the 18, though, they get to come down pit lane. Everybody has the option to come down pit lane. It's not just damaged cars, but there's no reason for a car that wasn't damaged.
Yeah, there are a few coming down pit road as well. So some other cars that have received damage that are clearly thinking to themselves, okay, well, it's better to come in now, get it repaired, before we go racing again. They'll join up to the back of the pack. Of course, the downside is that they lose whatever track position they still maintained. But I think, Jesse, when it comes to a 24-hour race, you'd rather have a fully fixed car than a few cars ahead of you at this stage, when you've got so much left of the race.
Without a doubt. If I had two options and one of them was to have a damaged car to go down a lap and get it fixed, or to get it fixed and have to go to the back of the pack, I would probably go to the back of the pack with a clean car. That would probably be what I would do. Of course, that's the injured 501 car coming into the pit lane, surrendering their positions. And Malinowski, who got away, he was challenged, admittedly, for the lead very early on. And here is the pace car driven by Tom Bryant. Will pick up the field, and they will maintain safety car speed. Like Ryan Gill said, all the cars that did pit will cycle out wherever they ended up after their pit stop. That does mean they will get all of their damage fixed, new tires, and be out on their way. This is a lot better than having to restart the race entirely. The clock is running. The time is ticking, of course. And despite the nullification of the race for the moment, it keeps everything going. Would be lovely to have this all of the time. I think we would all agree.
One thing that is worth keeping in mind now is that the cars that have come in and done a pit stop have reset their stint timer. And you'll notice, obviously, with it being the race remaining time at the top of the screen, we're almost 8 minutes effectively into the first stint. So all the cars that have not been into the pit lane, they're 8 minutes into a stint already. The cars that have come out of pit lane, they have reset their stint timer. So some of them may have done that strategically. If they're already towards the back of the pack, come in, drive through the pit lane, maybe do a stop if you need to, if you have any damage, even if it's just a couple seconds, and reset that stint timer, and maybe, just maybe, knock off a few minutes towards the last stint you have of the race, maybe carry a little bit of, a few less liters of fuel coming into your final stint, and maybe even double stint your tires in the final stint if your last stint is short enough.
Ooh, now that's an excellent point. I hadn't really even considered that, but you're right. They came in 7 or 8 minutes into the stint. That has put them off sequence. It also changes their strategy a little bit. You can tell the safety car has picked up the field. They have went off the limiter that was required. They now have to follow the safety car speed, and he's absolutely ripping around here.
Tom Bryant, not used to leading the pack in split one, but doing so at the moment. Hey,
folks, we made it 8.5 minutes into this broadcast.
I don't have this much fun as an SRO Esports race director, so I'm allowed to be jealous of Tom Bryant. And the 803 at the moment, effectively last on the road, but of course leading the pack around at the moment. And I think what we're all just waiting for now is the cars that did pit and fix that damage, or change tires, refuel, whatever they did. Essentially, we're waiting for them to catch back up. It's just the 501, the 504, the 95, and the 34 that we are waiting for. And as far as I could see, Jesse, we had 8 cars in total come down pit road. So that's 8 cars that are effectively off sync. I am counting Joe McCauley's car that towed back to the garage immediately in that one. So technically 7 that didn't tow back to garage, and they came through the pit entry of their own accord. So 7 cars effectively that are off sync significantly from the rest of the field. 7 minutes is quite a bit. It's a few laps around here. And it's going to be interesting to see, do some of those teams, do they stick to the original strategy and they cut this first stint short? Or, like I said, do they think 23 hours up the road and try and cut that final stint a bit short? We'll have to see. And, of course, the incident that happened on the very first lap, that will be looked at by the stewarding team as well. The incidents that happened on that first lap, the drivers that caused them will not get away with it. Those penalties will still be handed out if the stewarding team believe that someone was definitely at fault for an incident. So that's something to keep in mind as well, that if there was a driver up towards the front and they've caused an incident, they're losing time at the moment to essentially build a gap to try and nullify that penalty that they could receive. And the stewards are working at the moment, so all whilst this is still going on and we're waiting for the race to get underway, the stewards are full busy and getting into all the incidents that they have to look over across 4 splits here today. It's an absolutely mammoth effort from the stewards that we have out here to essentially be live stewarding 4 different races at once.
They are stewarding 4 different 24-hour races at the same time, and they'll be here as long as we are here as well. So the unsung heroes, of course, of endurance racing in general, a big thank you and a welcome to the stewards. We'll be hearing from them shortly, no doubt. I'm told we're going to get one more lap that we're going to do. The pace car is in, and I'm quite curious where they will go green. Will they go green here?
They're going to go green here. It's on the line.
And in fact, that is what they have done. The race has been resumed. The pace car has been withdrawn, and Malinowski will lead them off into turn 1. Wajna now in the 972 in second place, with Caracas right behind, trying to take that spot. The top 3, a slight breakaway. Herrera behind, and Fisher, the top 5 right now. It was interesting. I was reading chat as we will be doing this entire race. We appreciate your input. Neville reckons that if they would stay under safety car for about 30 minutes, that would shave off an entire pit stop for everyone in this 24-hour race. I love that thinking. Unfortunately, we didn't get quite that much time under the safety car, but I would say safety car's done its job there.
Definitely has done its job, and the race is back underway, and it is of course the 992 that leads from the 972. And they're going to be working their way around now, and everyone just going to try and settle into a rhythm and wait for those track grip conditions to start moving up towards the more optimum range. It's still a green track out here at the moment, still 17 degrees ambient and 17 degrees track temperature. One of the unfortunate downsides of the safety car is obviously that everyone goes into single file at the start of the race, so we don't usually get as many overtakes on a safety car restart as we do on an actual race start, but definitely seems like a few drivers going side by side through a few of these corners at the moment, as I think we just saw the 501 navigate its way past the 504.
Pedro Marks was trying to get that spot back. No avail, couldn't get it done that time around. Jardier driving for his own community team in the 40. It's the first time we've seen him in the series in quite some time in the World Tour. But here he is in the 24, the starting driver for the Jardier Community Team 2 car, and looking to get by Chris Verstappen in the 747, and looking good value for it, as Verstappen doesn't quite seem to have the legs out of the corner. Jardier looking to go the long way around. Don't think he won't do it, because he certainly will. Can't quite get the overlap to make it happen there. Could this be an out-braking maneuver into the bus stop, or will it even need to be that? Getting already side by side, Verstappen going just a bit wide. He's going to be boxed in by Batomski in front. If he gets this move, he's completed the hardest part. Still side by side, needs to get clear here before they get to turn one. I don't think he's going to quite do it, but does he have enough overlap to stay side by side for Eau Rouge?
Going to be forced onto the outside line, and there Jardier going to have to tuck back in now behind the Bentley. He's going to try and use Christopher Verstappen as much as he can just to cut a massive hole through the air, and the Bentley is pretty good at punching a hole through the air with the shape that it has. And up we go, up through Eau Rouge over the top of Radion, and now onto the Kemmel Straight. But it looks like Verstappen got a better exit over the top of Radion than Jardier did. Jardier probably having a look in his mirrors at this point in time. I think Verstappen has got that one safely done, and he is just going through the corners now and heading towards Les Combes. Meanwhile, a bit further back, you've got Yilmaz here going side by side with, is that Pagardal? It is, and going through is the 501 on the 83, and is the 504 going to try and squeeze through as well? They're going to have a go. They're on the inside line as they now come down towards Bruxelles. Are they going to have a send? No, they're going to think better of it. That puts them into a bit of a tricky situation. Oh, no, they've come up for another dive on the inside, and they've just tapped the BMW. They didn't turn them all the way around, but contact on front quarter to rear quarter there, and I'm pretty sure the stewards are going to have a look at that one, Jesse.
Yeah, and keep in mind, all these cars were already in the pit lane dealing with damage very early on, and now they're mixing it up, all trying to one-up each other and getting more damage immediately. Not the best course of action, certainly, as they finally sort that out for the minor positions. Jardier still trying to get by Verstappen. I believe these two have raced each other just a little bit in the past, and this will be a refresher course for both of them, as it hasn't happened in quite some time. But those two going at it in a battle here, coming up for what is effectively second place. Looks around the outside, Caracas doesn't quite have the overlap to get out there, but certainly looks like a little bit more pace by the 70 of Caracas right now over Wajna, but it isn't quite enough. Wajna covering the outside, and look, he's going to give up the inside to Caracas. Caracas is going to take the inside, but the wide angle for Wajna is all he needs to get back out in front. Good battle here for second.
Slight bit of contact between the two of them, but nothing significant. Just race on, lads, and that's what they will do. Grantis Caracas now, though, going to want to get a very, very good exit over the top of Radion, and has got a good exit, has the slipstream, has the pace over the Porsche in the straight line by the looks of it, is going to go to the outside line as we make our way down towards Les Combes. And now, is he going to be able to hold it around the outside? He's going to brake later as well, and he is going to get it done on the outside. I thought maybe hang it around the outside, tuck in on the inside for the second part of the corner, but then not even required from the 70. Amazing grip on the outside line and up into second place.
Very good racing here. Verstappen trying to not give up another spot here, as something has happened to the 747, because they are several positions back from where they were. Even if Jardier got by them, they should have still been in P14. Contact maybe or off track for Christoph Verstappen. The NSN Racing Bentley is fallen down through the order, but has gained one spot back. They were 17th. They got by Kavaka, at least, to get them back to 16th. I wonder what happened there.
Broadcast producer telling us that we don't have visuals of what happened to the 747, so it must have could have been a mistake on their own. Usually when we don't have a visual replay of an incident, it's typically a driver making the mistake on their own, so that's unfortunate for Verstappen. But 23 hours and 41 minutes 52 seconds and change. I think they got plenty of time to make up for it, Jesse, as we work our way through towards Blanchimont. Now we're looking at Martin Schumacher for the T3 Motorsport Black team in the 411, and they're closing down on Marco Ripper in the 514 Lexus right now, and just closing. And this BMW car, it's shown its strengths across pretty much every circuit we've been to so far in the World Tour, and that's the 514 going deep of Marco Ripper, and that allows Martin Schumacher to go through. And I wonder if that was intentional from Ripper, because Martin Schumacher's a pro car, Ripper is a silver car, and maybe not wanting to get too involved in a battle between two different classes this early in the race.
Look, sometimes you just don't want to deal with it. It's early in the race. You got to have your team strategy. Everyone would have had a meeting this morning or early this afternoon to talk about what the strategy was. And if you are a silver car, you stand more to lose by racing a pro car, especially here. Now, if we get the last couple hours of this race tomorrow, we start talking about it. We start talking about race them for all you got. You don't give up spots. But here, a lot of give and take, a little bit of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That might have been what happened right there. Potomski is trying to keep Corbin behind them, and meanwhile, Verstappen's trying to figure out how to get around both of them. Nice move here, as Potomski is going to give up that position to Corbin into Lecombe.
This looks like the kind of battle that you get towards the end of a sprint race, never mind 20 minutes into a 24-hour, but here we go then. So it is BMW, Bentley, BMW, and BMW. Kind of like the BMW sandwich, isn't it, at the moment? But they'll work their way through as best as they can. And at the moment, looking at Potomski in the 80, and now actually switching back to Marquez in the 504. These are some of the cars that pitted early on in the race during the safety car, and he's battling with Schwencek in the 107, going to go side by side, and the BMW is up the inside. The 504 is through on the 107, so that's another place made up for the Sims and Riggs BMW team, who I think were right at the back on the race restart, Jesse, and they've made their way up through at least a few places already.
Yeah, they certainly have. Don't expect any of these cars at the back of this pack right now to stay here for any particular period of time, as they're on the way marching back towards the front. Max Simons in the turn 102 BMW, trying to make short work of some of the drivers around him. He's going to be stuck around the outside. A very dangerous maneuver around Blanchimont, and it's very close, but they both just about make it. That's one of those places you got to really be careful about getting track limit warnings there. There is no addition to that today. You get 3 of those, and on the 4th time begging, you get a drive-through penalty. Ryan Gill, I don't need to explain it. You don't want a drive-through penalty here.
No, this is probably the worst. No, not probably. This is the worst track.
Guaranteed,
you could get a drive-through penalty at. There is no longer pit lane than Spa-Francorchamps at this point. And this is a place where a drive-through penalty just feels cruel, doesn't it? But, you know, you've got to be careful. And around a 24-hour race, yes, you know, avoiding getting 4 track cuts is extremely difficult. But you know what? It's possible. And it's not even possible. It happens quite a lot with quite a few teams when they do 24-hour races around here. Meanwhile, we're getting the first time penalty from the stewards added to the first car, and that's going to be the 5:04 of Pedro Marquez. They're going to be the first ones to receive a time penalty from the stewards. 5-second penalty goes out to that car at the moment, and as the piece of paper gets slipped under the door to me from Tom Roberts at the moment, who is our race controller for the race, it says incident on lap 5 between the 83 and the 5:04. 5-second penalty for the 5:04 for tapping the back of the 83 and causing the contact, place not given back. And that is the incident that we saw live on camera, where it was this is a separate incident that we're just seeing here. That's a replay of a different incident, but there was an incident between the 83 and the 5:04 that we caught on the stream, and that was how Pedro Marquez kind of got through with unnecessary contact. So a 5-second penalty, that's pretty straightforward. Jesse Lee, you were talking about drive-through penalties. We're, what are we, 23 minutes into the race? We've already got the first one. Adam Dubiel, drive-through penalty for track limits.
Yeah, you absolutely, Ryan. That's the thing. You can get them here in a hurry, especially if you're racing people. It isn't quite so bad when you're by yourself, but if you're fighting for position, and there's no reason to assume Forza Italia has not been fighting for spots, it's going to happen. And Dubiel, who was running 6th, is all the way down in P15, and he's not going to be able to make it to pit lane this time. Look, he's going to be forced to go. I'm not sure he was going to try. Adam was going to try to get the pit lane that time, but rather it mattered not. He was blocked in, unable to do so. Shades of F1 almost.
I think he wanted to go into the pit lane. Oh, you just see the Bentleys behind tap each other. Bentley and BMW, but I think he was going to try and go into the pit lane, Jesse. You saw him slowing down to try and let cars through, but I think he realized he'd let one car too many through as soon as he saw that massive train behind him, and at that point couldn't really do much, and has gone over the top of Radion again. Not sure if they've gained any time on that time around, but they've got to be careful that that doesn't turn into a stop-go 30, because it can. And at this point now, the 500, already in 16th place, is going to have to serve a drive-through penalty here that you wouldn't wish upon your worst enemy. And that's going to put them right to the back of the race, and a few seconds back off the back as well, as we continue to watch the battle unfold here. Has anyone told these guys they've still got 23 hours and 35 minutes to sort this all out?
Absolutely not. This is a pack of silver cars, and they're all absolutely going for it. I was thinking about who I was gonna call for that, but I didn't really know who to call. Call Simons, call Mulholland. Not really sure. They're all going for it. As Simons now looking down the inside of the Bentley here and trying to get that pass done into the double gauche. Not possible here. Of course, some of these corners have new names this year, and we're trying to bring you both of them today. Hotly debated in the RCI staff and the broadcasters about what they wanted to call the corners in the end. Call it whatever you like. I'll probably flip-flop at some point as well. For the time being, though, Simon's P19 trying to gain that spot back from Mulholland that got by him in the previous lap. My question is the 500 of Dubiel, are they clear? Can they serve their drive-through this time? As we ride on board the 22, the Fusion Hispana of Robin Pogdel, who is in the back of the pack here, has had his fair share of issues thus far. Certainly would have appreciated being a bit further up in front. I believe I just saw the 500 into the pit lane.
Yep, they have, and in fact, they've put their pit limiter on well before they reach the pit entry line, and that'll be to make sure that they don't speed on entry and pick up another drive-through penalty, or stop and go 30 rather. Entirely possible to also collect for speeding in the pit lane. That's the last thing you want on your mind. Meanwhile, the leader, by the way, we haven't said much about them since the race got back underway, but they're leading by 2.3 seconds over Grantis Caracas at this point, and Malinowski enjoying himself out there, should we say. And to confirm your theory from earlier, Jesse, you said that there might be a third driver in that car. Well, I can in fact confirm that there is no third driver in that car. It's going to be Malinowski and Boothbeat for 24 hours in the 992, and as far as I can see, they're the only team here in Split 1 that has 2 drivers fielding out the entire race?
Well, Fast Pasta told me a week or so ago, actually before qualifying happened, that they were going to two-man it. Of course, he felt very ill this time a week ago, and it was very much in question if they would continue that strategy. They had a couple of drivers in mind to come in, but what that tells me, the fact that it is only Malinowski and Boothby in that car today, that tells me either one, Malinowski feels a lot better than he did a week ago, or that they're both crazy. Both of those are completely likely stories. Have you met Malinowski and George Boothby?
So the latter one is extremely likely. We also have a drive-through penalty for Jaroslav Roth, by the way, in the 404. He was involved in an incident at the end of the Kemmel Straight on the very first lap. In fact, went into the back, I think it was, of the 972. I can't quite remember exactly what car it was, but I do remember the 404 did hit the back of someone very, very early on, just before the safety car was deployed. So they've been given a drive-through penalty for that, and they've already come into the pit lane to serve that. So that one should be disappearing off your screen shortly. And the 500, which has come in to serve its drive-through penalty for track limits, has now got a stop and go 30 for speeding in the pit lane. That must be speeding on pit out, Jesse Lee, because they were very slow on their pit in.
Yeah, without a doubt. They must have... I have no idea how you do that. You hit the limiter on the wrong line on pit out, maybe, and all it takes is to do it a fraction before you get to the marker board. The marker board's still there, so some kind of issue.
Or you do what Tom Bryan's team had them happen to them once, which is you accidentally catch the pit limiter button whilst you're in the pit lane, which can happen. You have a lot of wheels.
It's true.
You have a lot of buttons on your wheel. You can accidentally catch a button. It's happened to me before, not with the pit limiter button, with a different button. But you can, sometimes accidentally catch something, and that's usually why you put the pit limiter button out of reach of the general vicinity of your fingers whenever you're doing something on the wheel.
Christian Stricker, our broadcaster, brought up another good point. You can shift into second as well, and also do that. And if you're going downhill, right, in the car, I don't know, maybe they came off the limiter a little bit too quickly. Maybe they hit the shifter a little too early or accidentally. There's a couple of different things that go wrong. Nevertheless, the issue remains a stop and go 30 for DeBeal in the 500. The Forza Italia race has come completely undone here very early on. And, well, for a team, you got to give it to Adam, you called it, was on the limiter way before the pit in line. They got into the pit lane, the actual closed off lane, and hit the limiter before they actually had to. They were trying to be so careful, but something has terribly gone wrong with that car.
And now coming back in to serve that stop and go 30, you want to make absolutely sure that you don't speed again, because then you'll just end up in a never-ending cycle, and it gets very, very frustrating, and it's hard to calm down your frustration sometimes as a driver when all that's going on. Meanwhile, we'll have a little bit back to the racing what's going on here, because the 501 is up the inside of the 18. There's a bit of contact between the 501 and the 18, but the Audi is through, and that puts Joe McCauley on the back foot now, as I believe that's the Grid Finder car that's right on the back of them in the 89. They're going to be on the outside line coming into turn 1. They're going to see if they could try a cutback, but not really able to do so with the Simpson Riggs car just behind them there. So then they're going to have to try and slipstream behind the Bentley, the number 18 of Joe McCauley. They go through Eau Rouge, up and over Radion we go. And is that BMW going to have the chance now to slipstream through the Bentley? Yep, you can see just gaining on the Bentley. Going to be forced to go onto the outside line. Is this move going to be on for the 89 onto the 18? Joe McCauley's not going to make it easy. They go into the corner, outside line. Joe McCauley squeezes them up against the curb, but the inside line saves the 89, and that's lays up into 19th place.
Eric Lays with an absolute brilliant move, calculated, got an excellent run out of Radion. That was all they needed. McCauley did exactly what they needed to do as well. They defended the inside of Lacombe, but it didn't matter. The pace they had to get even in Lays' case was all it took. They both run incredibly wide out of No Name or Speakers. And that's exactly what I was going to ask you. That has to be a track limits, right? And I think it was for the both of them.
100% track limit for both of them there, so they're going to have to be careful. That's at least one for each of those cars. They might already have another one under their belt. So probably going to have to be a bit more careful going forwards now. You can see Joe McCauley here at the moment, and just not really having too much of an issue with his car at this point in time. Car looks pretty stable. Of course, the Bentley is a very solid choice for an endurance car, and it does like to go out for these long stints that you can make it run for. And Joe McCauley is very well acquainted with the Bentley as well, and sharing that car with Martin Grady and I think Grant Willamot's with them as well for this race in the number 18. So we'll see him in the car at some point. And here is Robin again down the inside into the bus stop chicane. Is that down the inside on the 102? It is on the 102. So, yep, got that one done nice. And they're in the same class as well. So either that was Simons just deciding that he didn't want to fight with an Audi that definitely looks quicker than him this early in the race, or that was definitely a much easier overtake than I've given it credit. Meanwhile, up towards the front, or near the front rather, for fourth place, this is BMW versus McLaren.
Fisher desperately trying to get that spot away, and in fact does. Just strong arms into Lacombe and gets it done. Fisher in P4, Moreira back down to P5. It probably won't matter too much to Moreira, to be honest. The 349, that McLaren still leading in the silver class and has a 3.5 second gap to Hacker behind them. So still in good shape if you are a Moreira fan. But excellent job by the Butterfly Effect Esport team, the 200 BMW, getting that spot done. As I saw Fisher in, I think it was 5th or 6th earlier. They're certainly moving in the right direction. Out front, by the way, the gap isn't going out. Malinowski holds a 2.4 second gap. That's been that way for the past 15 minutes. Caracas has not allowed the 992 to get away. If anything, the gap has come down a little bit. Wajna, who was in second place in the 972, has lost a considerable time. And now that Fisher has got around Moreira for P4, I'm quite curious. 3.7 seconds the gap to third place. I'm curious if Fisher will start to catch Wajna, as that 972 just doesn't look to have quite the pace as the other cars inside the top 5 right now. Meanwhile, Martin Schumacher here for T3 Motorsport Black, hounding the back of Lucas Rommel for 7th place.
Yeah, and looking at the lap times as well between the leaders, Malinowski's fastest lap of the race is not even a 10th quicker than Caracas' fastest lap, as they're going to go side by side coming out of the bus stop chicane, and it's going to be Rommel who keeps in front of Martin Schumacher for the time being, but you'd rather get the feeling that it's going to be inevitable when that BMW gets through. You can see Giardier in the background as well, and Marco Ripper seeing Giardier in his mirrors, seeing that he's in a different class and just letting him go on through. And that's intelligent from the likes of Marco Ripper to not be fighting for an overall position at this stage in the race. Focus on your class position, because that's what matters for the points at the end. Of course, everyone loves a bit of pride in finishing ahead of someone else and other pro cars if you're in a silver class car. But at the end of the day, this early in the race, you do not need to be fighting tooth and nail with cars that are quicker than you, most likely.
No, certainly, it's give and take, and that's part of talking with your team. And a lot of these teams will likely have one of their drivers acting as a strategist or sort of a spotter, if you will, so to speak, of telling them what to expect, what's around them, what they should probably do. You work as a team. This is a team event, after all. Racing largely is. And sometimes it just is not worth it, and other times it is. Early on in the race, even if it's a car in your class, some of the time early in a race, you need to make an adjustment. You know there's something amiss with the car. The tire pressures are wrong. It's actually easier and more beneficial to you to just sort of make it easy on the guy who caught you and not lose time getting in an unnecessary battle. None of which is happening right here. as Martin Schumacher is still trying to get by Rommel. They got to be very careful. Jardier has crept into that picture as well. P9 for Jardier Community Team 2. And all of these drivers need to be very careful of the track limits as well. You know as well as I do, Ryan, one car goes off, you're following them, and then all of a sudden an entire train of cars has one extra track cut.
Yeah, the aero wash effect. It's very easy to just follow someone through a line, and you see it so often sometimes. And oh, here comes Jardier late on the brakes and through on Martin Schumacher. Made that one look easy against the T3 Motorsport car. And I'm not entirely sure if Martin Schumacher gave that position up willingly, or if Jardier was just that much later on the brakes than the BMW. It did look very, very odd. But maybe this is Martin Schumacher letting Jardier through, knowing that Jardier is quicker than him anyway. Don't waste time battling him and hope that Jardier can put Rommel under some pressure, maybe force a mistake out of the Porsche, and Martin Schumacher can gain a place from that without having to do too much work.
At some point when Jardier catches you, you usually know what the score is going to be, and Martin may be able to benefit from this as well. If Jardier passes Rommel, maybe Schumacher can still get that spot away anyway. Or it could have, like you said, it could have just been Jardier just absolutely going for it and getting that spot away. I did not expect that Aston, or any Aston, to be quite as potent as the 40 has proved to be so far into this race. That Jardier Community Team's been pretty good, but around here, I did not expect to see one marching towards the front. But here we are. Max Simmons racing for P17, trying to stay with Mulholland here as it's 2x2 now.
Oh, and that's a grid finder car just going deep into Bruxelles, and that's going to allow Joe McCauley to get back on through. And then there's the Sims and Riggs car of Pedro Marquez carrying that 5-second penalty just in behind them. Schwencheck, by the way, in the 107, they have received a drive-through penalty. And as I look through my reports here, Jesse, it says lap 8, turn 8 involving the 34 and the 107, drive-through for the 107. The 107 taps the back of the 34, causing them to spin, place, not return. So that sounds like a very slam dunk penalty for the 107, and they've already gone and served it. And one of the things I usually feel, Jesse Lee, is that when a driver gets a penalty, like a drive-through or a stop and go, and they serve it immediately, that to me kind of signals that they know they're at fault. Usually teams, when they don't think they're at fault, they'll try to justify their reason and keep the car out for at least a couple of laps. But Jardier here challenging Lucas Rommel for that 7th place, and I would not be surprised if that Aston Martin, by the end of the next lap, is in front of the 137. But Lucas Rommel's not going to give it up easily.
Absolutely flying is Jardier, Jaroslav Hanzik, the man that everybody knows as Jardier, and filling in a part-time role for his own community team in the 40, starting that car and, again, going absolutely swimmingly. And we'll see what this looks like. Oh, a little bit sideways right there through a Rouge. Very close indeed. Excellently held by, oh my goodness. And that's actually going to leave him acceptable behind. Martin Schumacher thought about making a move to the inside, covered off by Jardier, and they all stay line astern. But my goodness, that was frightening. That'll wake you up.
I'm convinced he's the Marc Marquez of sim racing. Just things like that where it's just absolutely unbelievable. But as we continue onwards now, Jardier is going to try and make that inroad back in towards Lucas Rommel, and Martin Schumacher, of course, just following along. Marco Ripper's not really dropped off of these guys either. He's kind of just sitting there at the moment. He's in 3rd place at the moment in the silver class. He's got 1.6 seconds between himself and 4th place in silver, but has quite a ways to go at the moment. In fact, these 3 cars in front of him, and then a 4.6 second gap between Lucas Rommel and the 2 leading cars in the silver class. That's Felipe Moreira and Tavinza Hacker at the moment. They're going on in 5th and 6th place overall for the lead of silver, and I think there's 2.7 seconds between those 2 cars at the moment. So it's all going good for the silver leader right now, but still a very, very long way to go as Lucas Rommel keeps on motoring and will keep on looking in the mirrors and just hoping that that Aston Martin keeps getting smaller rather than bigger.
Certainly is the case, as the Aston has absolutely recovered and not swayed in the slightest, as Jardier trying to pin Lucas Rommel to the inside of the chicane. Can't do it, as the very slippery and quick in the corners Porsche gets right back out in front. We'll see what Jardier can do this time by without a slip in Eau Rouge, because it was, folks, I don't know what it looked like to you on the cameras, but as drivers ourselves, we all withdrew here in the booth, because we know how hard that is to catch, and it was an excellent catch. For me, that was more of the air being taken off of Jardier than anything Jardier did. Of course, way more smooth this time through, and didn't necessarily gain too much. Battle here for P4, and in fact, that is still going on. Morera and Wajda. Actually, excuse me, that's Morera and Fisher, in fact.
That's actually Morera, who's got past Fisher as well. The 349, which was in 5th place just a moment ago when I was talking about the lead of the silver class. The 349 McLaren has actually got ahead of the 200 BMW, so Fisher just dropping back a bit at this point and has fallen behind the silver class leader. That gives Terenza Hacker a bit more of work to do if they're going to claw back that lead to the silver leader at the moment, because now they have to get past a pro car to catch up to the 349, but just about a 2.6 second gap between those two. And I am keeping an eye on what's going on between the two leaders at the moment. 2.2 seconds separates Malinowski from Caracas. I think Caracas has had a bit of a scruffy lap at this point. He's down by half a second on his personal best, so definitely a mistake has been made there somewhere. But I think Malinowski's also made a small error, because he's almost a quarter of a second down on his personal best as well. So both of the cars up towards the front of the field, seeming to have a couple of issues out there on their own.
Well, I'll tell you what I was noticing right before all that kicked off. Caracas had that gap within 2 seconds. It was 1.9, and the lap prior to me noticing that, Grantas Caracas took the fastest lap of the race. The Speed Juice fastest lap belongs to the Volante number 70 McLaren, and that gap has very small but steadily been coming down, albeit with the exception of the previous lap you mentioned. The gap went up to 2.2 seconds. It started to come down a little bit again. We'll continue to monitor that situation, continuing to monitor this situation. How long until Jardier sends it on Lucas Rommel or the patience runs out? Everybody being very patient early in this race, but Jardier knows that he must be a bit quicker than Lucas Rommel in the 137. I wonder how desperate you get early on in a race like this.
I don't think Jardier will be getting desperate. He's been in this situation so many times before. I mean, how many 24-hour races does Jardier do in a year? In ACC alone, never mind other sims as well. So he'll be plenty experienced in this. He won't be getting too troubled as well. And of course, he's got 4 other drivers, I believe, in that car fielding out with him today. The like of Mike Williams, Wolf Gruber is also in that car as well, and I think Sean Clark is filling out for them amongst another name that I can't remember off the top of my head. So, you know, they've got 5 drivers in total in that car, so looks like they're going to be sharing the load quite a bit across the course of this race. So maybe Jardier, as he gets right on the back of Lucas Rommel, maybe he is a bit of a hurry up at the moment, because if he's not going to be doing that many stints across this race, maybe he's doing only a few hours, would explain why he's starting the car as he gets very, very close to Lucas Rommel. Not sure if there was a touch there or not. But yeah, Jardier at the moment, maybe he is just feeling a bit pressured to get a move on if he's not going to be doing that many hours out here today, and he's just going to try and help the team up and get them as high up the order for as much as he can for the little time that he's possibly spending here today.
Well, certainly he knows that he can get the job done. He can get them well up inside the top 10. He's doing that very well, threatening for 7th place here. Oh, my goodness, contact there coming through Blue Shaman. Very close. Oh, my goodness, he just about gets in front, does Lucas Rommel. And will we see a retaliatory sort of strike here? by Jardier, as that was very close and too close for comfort for me, as comes to blows for P7 here.
Lucas Rommel is proving, if anything, that he is not easy to get past. And Jardier, a little bit of a flash of the lights. Not sure if that was frustration or...
I'm going to go with yes.
I mean, I would say that frustration would probably be the favorite choice. But, you know, Jardier at this point, he's not going to be too troubled by it. He's probably still got a smile on his face at this point, you know, despite the fact that he might have been a bit frustrated with what happened there between the two of them. And he's going to be enjoying this. He's going to be working his way down. And you can see there just behind that Martin Schumacher and Marco Ripper, they're kind of just sitting there in station. They're kind of just watching this. They've got a bit of a gap between themselves and Jardier there. And that's not a bad idea to have, because if these two come together and there's an incident, you want enough of a gap between yourself and the cars ahead so that you can take avoiding action.
You certainly do. I like that strategy. I always... Everyone asks, who would you like to be in a battle? Would you like to be the lead car or the chasing car? Both of those answers are wrong in my opinion. The correct answer is always, I'd like to be the third car in the line. And Schumacher gets to be the third car in the line. But you talked about Ripper earlier. Ripper is there, very close to this group, willing to pounce if anything were to come up. But very close contact indeed. We talked about Hacker a little bit ago as well. Morera did regain fourth place, got by Garrett Fisher. And I think there was a little bit of urgency by Morera, if I'm honest. The 349 leading in the silver class, but Hacker is catching Fisher and also catching Morera ever so slightly. And I think that might have spurred on Morera to get by Fisher, put a car in between them.
Oh, here we go again.
Look at this.
It's going to be Jardier on the outside line. We're going to come up towards Blanchimon now. He's going to be ahead. He's going to try and go around the outside. He's going to go around the outside. As he had the momentum, he had the pace to do it. And now Schumacher's going to have a look. He's going to try and capitalize on the situation. Slight contact between the two of them, but he's going to go around the outside for the second stage of the bus stop. And that's what Martin Schumacher was waiting for. Little flash of the lights. Not sure if that's a flash towards Rommel or if he's thanking Jardier for the opportunity there. Either way, carry on. Rommel loses 2 places in 3 corners.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Martin Schumacher wanted, and that's exactly how Jardier drew it up 1 lap earlier. It didn't come off, but second time asking, Jardier back through P7. Schumacher executed that plan excellent as well. Saw the weakness, took advantage of it. A little bit of contact there in the chicane. I'm not sure the stewards will care too much about that. Letting the racers race, always the priority, and I think that was always going to be Schumacher contesting that at bare minimum. And both
Marco
those cars.
Ripper's going to have a go now.
Oh, here it is. Ripper up the inside Lecombe, but not going to have the desired result as they end up cycling back through one of the very rare Lexi in the field, but doing very, very well. As we've seen this all season long, the GC Racing 514 Lexus has been in or near the top 10 most of the season.
Yeah, been a very, very consistent team, and they're gonna, well, they were going to have a go at getting past Lucas Rommel. Obviously just backed off a bit now and probably focusing a bit more on Steinhauser behind in the 44, who has actually caught up to these guys. And I think maybe Lucas Rommel was being a bit of a cork in the bottle, not just for Jardier, but also for the likes of Martin Schumacher and maybe even for Marco Ripper as well now, because that 44 has caught up significantly up to the back of them, and that will be why the 514 was kind of in a bit of a hurry up to try and get past Lucas Rommel. They want a car between themselves, and 4th place in silver behind. Meanwhile, looking at the Pace Hub car in the number 95, one of the pro cars, they're down in 22nd overall. And
do you know why this is significant, though, Ryan?
What? Go on, Jesse, enlighten me.
When we restarted this race, when the safety car was lifted, the 95 Pace Hub car was the last car in the race. It's up to 21st now.
So good progress then for the pace sub car from the back of the grid. Lucas Rummel still proving to be difficult to get through, and this is going to give Steinhauser the chance he wants to get through and up into third place in silver, and that means that Marco Ripper is now out of the podium places. So Lucas Rummel being a cork in the bottle now for some of the silver placed cars on the podium, but the benefit that Marco Ripper has now is that he doesn't have to deal with the cork in the bottle. It's rather the silver car in front that has to deal with the cork in the bottle, and he has to hope that there'll be an opportunity for him to make a mistake and then get back through.
Marco Ripper now trying desperately to hang on to the back, and of course hopes that the same thing that happened to him will happen to Steinhauser here in right behind Lucas Rummel and maybe get that spot back. Well, if it worked for Martin Schumacher, it could certainly work for you, Marco Ripper. Up front, not missing anything except Fast Pasta. Malinowski has retaken the Speed Juice Fastest Lap of the Race award. The only problem with that is it's not changed. The gap between first and second, very close between them, 2.2 second. Pedro Marks had a close call right there.
In fact, it's not 2.2 seconds, Jesse. That's just changed as they've crossed the sector timing lines. It's 1.7 now because Malinowski's made a mistake. He's lost half a second in this lap. So that's gone down a bit. We'll keep the folks at home up to date on that, and if they get any closer, we'll probably have a flick over to them. Meanwhile, just watching what's going on here. Steinhauser now, it's his turn to try and get through Lucas Rummel. Seen Jardier do it, seen Martin Schumacher do it, seen Marco Ripper try and not succeed. Will the 44 pass the trial of the 137, or will be made to wait ever longer? And I think with the 514 just looming in the mirrors there, you'll want to get past this car sooner rather than later. And we talked about, obviously needing to be patient and not taking too many risks early on in the race. That's understandable, but you also don't really, want to spend an entire stint sat behind a car that A, isn't in your class and is just hurting your overall race pace.
No, it's one of those things. Everybody on the same lap, you're allowed to race. And I was sitting in on the driver's briefing before the race today. They were talking about blue flag etiquette. They mentioned that it was nice to, if you are blue flagged, obviously to move over. You're not going to get that in this case, though, because it's not required to begin with. But especially if you're on the same lap, you're encouraged to race each other. And that's exactly what you're seeing here. Lucas Rummel doesn't want to lose any more spots in the Weishite 137 because it's going to hurt them if they have to get spots back to then catch up back to Schumacher, Jardier, etc. So they're trying to stay in front of the majority of the silver class cars for their own benefit. So they're fighting for that. Steinhauser and Ripper are fighting each other for third place in the class, and also to get a little bit closer to their top runners in their class, and they're trying not to lose more time, more importantly, and all of that is coming together. A disagreement, it's motor racing, it's going to happen. It's Christian's job here to try and get around Lucas Rummel and Ripper as well. I know that Ripper just wants Christian to make a move at some point, so maybe leapfrog back into P3.
So Darren Mulholland in 20th place at the moment, on the back of Pedro Marquez, who almost ended up in the barrier there. And that was very, very close for the 504, already carrying that 5-second penalty. I can tell you if they'd hit the barrier, that'd be more than 5 seconds they'd be serving in the pit lane to repair that damage. That could have been nasty for the Sims and Riggs car, but they're going to keep going as Darren Mulholland will chase them down. You've got Simons and then the 95 car that you mentioned, Jesse, that was right at the back of the field on the race restart. They're in 22nd right now, and of course 3 cars ahead of them, and they'll be looking at those 3 cars thinking that's 3 more places I can make up in this
bit of a mistake there by Mulholland, and it's going to let Simmons by.
It is going to let Simmons by, and will it let Lindner by as well? We're going to have to find out. The 95 is going to go on the outside line. Is he going to do a Jardier type move? Doesn't quite have the pace to do it, and I don't think he's going to be late enough on the brakes either down into the bus stop chicane, as Darren Mulholland now just starting to put some pressure on not on Linder, on Simons there, trying to see if he can take that place back. The 95 car, in the situation that you said you would want to be in, Jesse. You got 3 cars, you want to be the one right at the back just watching this go on.
Oh, 100%. It worked for Schumacher, didn't it? And that's exactly what I'm talking about. It almost always works out for the third car in line when you get 2 of these cars fighting each other. Simmons able to get the spot P20 away from Mulholland on the mistake. 781 looked a little out of sorts there. And, oh, my goodness, it's going to continue here as they all scatter up Radion. And will that give Linder an opportunity to get back inside the top 20? He might have a spot for 21st. Could it be more? They're going to go 3 wide into the over to the left is the Bentley, and this might be exactly what Darren Mulholland's nightmare looks like, as Linder going around the outside, down to the inside through the S section, and he's going to get it done before he gets to Bruxelles. 2 for 1. That's a BOGO. Linder back inside the top 20 after being dead last on the restart. Incredible drive.
Take a bow, Linder there in the 95. Fantastic job, not just capitalizing on Simmons, who made a mistake going over the top of Radion, but then using the double slipstream that he would have had over the likes of Mulholland to get on the inside. And Mulholland couldn't really defend on the inside either, because the 95 was already up alongside him by the time he'd realized what had happened. So good job by the pace hub car. Gets another place, like you said, up into the top 20. And Darren Mulholland now under pressure from Simmons again. So this battle isn't entirely over between the 102 and the 781. But what is over is the battle between the 781 and the 95 by the looks of it, as the 95 starting to clear up the road. Already 3/4 of a second ahead is that Aston Martin, and they'll be looking at their next target 2.5 seconds down the road, which is Pedro Marquez in the Simpson Riggs BMW.
Well, keep in mind that pace hub car that qualified 14th place, didn't make the Super Pole session, but still was top 15 pace in a field full of 32 plus cars. So they're fighting for positions that they would have out qualified for the majority anyway. So that's why you're seeing the pace discrepancy in the pace hub car, making their way through, making it look really good, though, I will say, for the 95. Marco Ripper continuing the good fight themselves, continuing to try and get by Steinhauser in the 44. Close racing here. He's down to the inside of Lacombe. Will he have it done and dusted? Just about. Very close. Marco Ripper goes to the inside, gets the spot, and retakes P3 in the silver class. Excellent racing here between these two.
Very nicely done, and we have seen some fantastic overtaking and battling, haven't we, in just the first hour of the race. Yep, that's right, folks, we're just about 30-odd seconds away from the first hour coming to an end. And, well, with the first hour coming to an end, let's just have a little bit of a catch-up on what's happened so far. We had the start, we had an accident at Eau Rouge Radion, as you would expect it. There was also a little bit of an accident between a couple of cars at the front at the end of Les Combes. So we had to call a safety car. The safety car was out for roughly about 2 laps, maybe 3 laps, I think it was, Jesse, and then we got back underway racing again. Some of the cars have had to come right from the back of the field and made their way up, like the 95. A couple of cars came in, pitted, and repaired some damage, so they're already off sequence on their pit stops as well. But it was the 992 that took about a 3-second lead, you know, early on in the first stint. But Caracas in the 70, they have clawed it back to 1.1 seconds towards the end of the first hour of racing.
Well, folks, we told you it's a massive effort on our end to bring this race to you. We're happy to do it, of course. 9 casters and 4 broadcasters. It's time for one of those broadcast breaks. We hope you've enjoyed the first hour. Stick around. We'll be right back after the broadcast change.